Good morning. It's Friday. As I say, thank God it's Friday. Chilly but bright and sunny. Temperatures rising from 23 degrees now and about 27 degrees. I will probably get up to 33 degrees before the end of the day. But thank you for joining us. I'm Neota Igbe.
Good morning and welcome. It's a lovely end of the week. We've had a very interesting week, not just in Nigeria, around the world, but it's come to an end and maybe we can actually get to enjoy the weekend. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kayla Magwa.
Talking about the matter of climate change. This week is COP29, climate change, the effects of climate change. So we're going to a part of Cross River State where you see buildings and greenery. And then we ask the question, can we expand the infusion of greenery? There you go. Look at the green. See that?
I have a terrible secret.
Which is?
I've never been to Cross River.
Oh, come on. You
Never.
need to, especially about this time when the carnival
This is when the carnival holds.
Yes, but look at this. So in the midst of all the construction, midst of all the buildings and all of that, you still find the greenery. It's a green state. The air is fresh in the midst of all the industries that are coming up there. And if this can be done more, I mean, infuse greenery into every part of the country. The last time I went to Germany, as you're flying over Berlin, you're seeing the greenery in the midst of all the construction there. It helps. All we talk about climate change, the effects of climate change can be mitigated with enough greenery. And I know that Nigeria's vegetable cover had been reduced at a certain time because trees were being felled back and forth. States like Taraba State, for instance, have banned any illegal felling of trees whatsoever. And I think Cross River State has also done that as well, just to ensure that the greenery, the vegetable cover of the state remains so. So this is a bit of Cross River, and I'm sure if it was a carnival period, Kayla will be so excited.
I want to go.
Oh, you should go.
I mean, it's such a beautiful site. It reminds me a lot of Akwa Ibom as well. I think states in that part of the country generally, take their greenery very seriously. But Cross River there on your screen, okay, so name for the Cross River. And it was formed from the southeastern part of the country, of course. Capital is Calabar, and then border is really massive. Look, it borders to the north through Benue, to the east through Ebonyi and Abia State, and the southwest through Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful, and its eastern border is part of the border with Cameroon.
Yeah.
So it's a lovely place. I can't wait to go to this place. And if you're from Cross River, good morning. How are you feeling? How are you feeling this morning? The air must be so much cleaner.
Oh, it's clean.
all those trees.
This thing, the vegetable cover of Cross River State spans across a variety of ecosystems, including rainforests, swamps, mangrove forests, and savannas. The savannas are going up towards the northern part, towards Benue, as you were talking about earlier, but the swamps are in the Niger Delta creeks. The rainforest is just in between the swamps and the savanna belts and the mangrove. So you just find a mix of ecosystems around there. The vegetable cover is beautiful.
And it was created, I hear, in 1967. And then the regime under which it was created, the man who headed that regime is still alive, Yakubu Gowon.
Yes.
So that was when this was created.
Yeah.
So it's a lovely place. And I can't wait to experience this place.
Indeed. One of the oldest rainforests in Africa is the Cross River National Park. One of the oldest rainforests in Africa. And you could just get more facts about Cross River State. But that's Cross River. So let's stay green and protect the environment. Climate change is real. It's happening. I mean, there was a time when we could not predict the amount of rain. I mean, in this year alone, we had predictions of floods here and there because no one could say exactly where. Someone said, imagine floods caused by rain in desert areas. That is, if that doesn't prove that climate change is real, then what else proves that climate change?
I mean, it's a lot to take in and a lot for us to think about as a country. Because of the impact it's having on everything, Well, we do have to take a look at some of the major things happening today.
Yes, indeed.
I'm going to start off with business. And this one is particular for me and for a lot of you. You've been complaining about your bank app not working. In fact, for me, since the 1st of October, since the 1st of October, it's been war. But it's a lot better right now. But on business today, we'll be talking about this bank app upgrade, because that's the explanation our banks gave us. They said there's an upgrade. And I went to my bank, knowing who I am. I went there. I said, well, explain to me what this upgrade means. And they told me, oh, look, it's supposed to make your work, make your transactions safer, seamless, all these explanations. Well, on Business Morning today, they'll be talking about all we need to know about this bank app upgrade, and I think it promises to be a really good one. I'm looking forward to it. Have you been struggling?
I am looking forward to it.
You've been struggling with your bank?
No. Okay, so yeah, we've had that issue, and then sometimes you wait. When you need it most, it doesn't work. Then just when you're about to give up, it will just kick in and all of that. So you need to listen to this conversation. But also, I'm looking forward to the day when we can say, okay, from our devices, from even our bank apps, we can vote, because they've not been able to hack the monies in the banks and in our accounts.
But they are able to.
But they say they
can. The ones
if they
with
want to
our
vote it, they'll hack it. Come on. Anyway,
you need to explain yourselves, bank people.
Anyway, so that's what's going on Business Morning today. But let's just go on, Kaylee, and look at what the papers are saying.
Let's go.
The headlines.
We begin the headlines this morning with the Daily Times. Hardship. We appreciate your endurance, the federal government tells Nigerians, says economic reforms are yielding results. More on that from the Daily Times newspaper, page 4, I believe, having more details. Nigerian News Direct. Federal government laments $82 billion investments by IOCs in other countries. Woos investors. Page 3 has more details. The Nigerian Tribune. National grid collapses for the second time in 3 days. Page 6 with more details. TCN blames frequency spike for blackout. Adelabu orders immediate implementation of committee's reports. More details from the Nigerian Tribune. And the New Telegraph, DHQ confirms emergence of new terror group, Lukarawas, in Sokoto and Kebbi. Pages 2 and 4 of the New Telegraph with more details. And they're saying that the group, with origins in Niger Republic, is a fallout of security gaps in border areas and declares 9 people wanted for terrorism in the Northeast. More details from the New Telegraph. The Blueprint newspaper this morning, the CNG initiative takes a center stage. The initiative unlocked $200 million private sector investments, according to the presidency. Meanwhile, the presidency is allaying safety concerns regarding that development in Malaysia. Says it is LPG related, not CNG. More on that from the Blueprint newspaper today. The Daily Independent. Ongoing economic reforms have started yielding results, says the federal government. Unlocks $1 billion across energy value chain and expecting 2 major investments by mid-2025. More on that from the Daily Independent. This Nigeria. New terrorist group emerges. Defense headquarters raises the alarm. They're known as Lukarawas. Military says the group from Niger and Mali operates in parts of Sokoto and Kebbi. Meanwhile, the FCT minister is directing contractor to extend the Kuje Road to Gwagwalada. More details there from This Nigeria. And from the Leadership newspaper this Friday, military raises the alarm over new terror group. Says that they are now in Kebbi and Sokoto. They are also stating that they killed 481 and arrested 741 and rescued 492 in October. More details on page 4 of the Leadership this Friday. And the Vanguard newspaper. Media owners, editors, others asked Tinubu to save the industry. The Guardian, Nigerians in diaspora create new demand income for teachers. Those are the headlines this morning.
Interesting stories on the front pages of some of the dailies. Let's start with this one here for me. It's New Telegraph. You see that just above the nameplate is a report. Naira drops to fresh lows as liquidity dwindles. This question of the liquidity of the naira, the stability of the naira against the dollar, going back and forth. And someone in a private conversation was suggesting that if Nigeria tells those coming to buy our crude to buy in naira, you want to buy Nigerian crude, come with naira. All these matter of the naira shaking against the dollar, it will stabilize. But the biggest problem, this is what the young man was saying to me, but the biggest problem is the fact that Nigerians love to hold the dollar above the naira. So anytime we find out that there's a FAC allocation disbursement, suddenly things look different. Come on, can we love our country any better? Anyway, so the other stories here that really strike. They see that pocket there. 2027 Nigerians looking to PDP for direction coming from the Oyo State governor. But this one under the second is security related. DHQ confirms emergence of new terror group Lukarawas in Sokoto, Kebbi. Says group with origin in Niger Republic. Fallout of security gaps in border areas. Declares 9 wanted for terrorism in Northeast. Lagbaja's actions on battlefield will inspire us to kill terrorists. Well, can we just get this over and done with once and for all? I mean, we do appreciate what our security operatives are doing, the soldiers, the police, and the military, and the police, the DSS. We appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you. Thank you. We really do appreciate those of you who have paid the ultimate price. Thank you, and thank you to your families who were willing to let you go. Thank you, as painful as it is. But as Nigerians, let's all come together and see this whole insecurity matter and all the other challenges we seem to have really be put to an end. But that's it from the New Telegraph.
Quite a number of things going on in the papers today. The Vanguard starts with this one that affects us, that affects the media. And it's there, more on it from page 5 of the Vanguard this morning. Media owners and editors and others are asking Tinubu to save the industry. How that's supposed to go, you can get more details on page 5 of the Vanguard today, so you can understand what it is that these media owners are asking for. But you know, it's a reflection of everything that we're going through in this country. Every sector is going through some kind of downturn. And we're seeing people struggling to survive. Media owners had been struggling even before these reforms came in. But you know, what should be done now? What can be done to make life a little easier for media practitioners? And if we're going to uphold this sacred duty we've been given as members of this realm, how do we ensure objectivity? Well, one of the ways to ensure objectivity is to eliminate hunger. If someone is hungry or in need, it's very difficult for him to be objective, especially if you're dangling food in front of them. So it's a very precarious situation. It's not just about the media, though. It is indicative of what's going on across all sectors. We want to be able to have a media that is objective, that stands for truth, that speaks truth to power. You know, if we're doing that, then we have to be able to specifically look at that space and see the importance of protecting it from vices that can be caused by one being hungry. It's a very precarious situation, and one that I hope all stakeholders will take a look at and find some kind of solution to, because we cannot have this realm, this sacred duty of ours, you know, jeopardized. And as long as we take things for granted, we don't get the benefit out of them. So that's what I'm looking at today from the Vanguard. But we'll go for a short break. When we come back, we have quite a lot of things to talk about. We'll be talking about the collapsing grid, and that'll be coming up later. And then the DHQ gave us some scary news yesterday about a new terrorist group that's operating in the Southwest. That will be our first conversation. So stay with us.
troops are confronted with a new terrorist sect in the Northwest. This sect is known as Lakurawa. The Lakurawas are affiliated to terrorists from the Sahel, particularly from Mali and Niger republics. They began incursion into northwestern part of Nigeria, namely Sokoto and Kebbi states. And like I mentioned, they came in from Niger and the Mali axis. Now, why are we seeing this at this time? This came as a result of the coup that took place in Niger Republic. Winning this war without the support of the people is close to impossible. When those people came in, the citizens welcomed them. They did not report them. They thought they were saints. Until they now had a grip of them and started doing funny things with them.
Well, that will be our focus in this segment of the program. We have in the studio men who've been there and who understand how all of this works and how it can all be put together, as we say, to get to an end. In the Abuja studio here, we have retired Major General Pat Akemvinge, who holds a PhD in criminal justice. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
At one time, Major General Akemvinge was the Provost Marshal of the Army and subsequently Chief of Logistics, but he's left that field now and he's into a bigger, broader and bigger state where he still tries to add back to that part of his life. But also joining us virtually is a former operative of the DSS, Dr. Seyi Adetaya, who's a publisher of Eon's Intelligence and regional vice president of the ACES International West and Central Africa region. Dr. Adetaya, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
Let's start with you, Major General Vingi. This announcement of the emergence of a new terrorist group, Lakurawa, did it come as a surprise?
Well, to me, not really. It's just another layer to the number of challenges we have. You see, we are operating in a nation that has very porous borders, surrounded by countries that are largely destabilized, that are facing security challenges, especially in the Sahel. So when you have a situation where crossing points are up to 1,400 unmanned, then you will have these elements roaming on governed spaces, factors that include climate change and the challenges that come with it, unemployment, poor governance. So it's not surprising that IS Sahel, as they are also called, are now operating within Sokoto and Kebbi states, in fact, in 5 local government areas. I'm not surprised.
Mr. Adetaya, in terms of intelligence, as an intelligence person, I know both of you are doing intelligence, basically. Mr. Adetaya, just let us, from what the DHQ announced yesterday, talked about them coming from Libya, Mali, and Niger Republic, and he says it all started out with the coups in that space. And when they came in, they were welcomed by the people. Why would the people be welcoming them?
Well, I think that largely has to do with our tradition of being governed more by religion than by our societal and community needs, or let me say, being committed to the things that will make us to live better. We've seen, if you look at the emergence of others like Boko Haram and several others in both in Niger State and Nasarawa, it all started with one form of doctrine, a kind of doctrine, socialist kind of doctrine, where they try to use some elements of socialism to bring people together, have a common living where one assists the other, and people tend to quickly accept that as a kind of a society that can help them, or take care of their need. And before you know it, they start introducing this doctrine, and at the end of the day, they become menace to the same people they try to bring together. We need to understand this, that the fact that GHQ made a press release yesterday doesn't mean that was the first time that government actually came into the knowledge of this Lakurawa group. Okay, I think about 5 days ago, the deputy governor of Sokoto State, while receiving the 33 course member course of the National Defense College, made that statement while addressing them, and first brought it to limelight, to the public view, that there's a group called Lakurawa, and they are constituting menace. They are major security threat in the likes of Boko Haram in that community. But the truth is that government have actually been tackling this, but we still need to go beyond our current approach. I don't know the details of our current counterterrorism measure in terms of what the Office of the NSA have developed, which I believe is going to be the direction they are going to address this. But the truth is that whether it is Lakurawa or it is not, they are the same. They are one of same. They are bandits, they are terrorist groups, and they are operating within the same space that others are currently operating. They are not different from the bandits that we have been, tackling. It's just we have a group now with a different name. We have different bandit groups in Niger State, in Katsina, Kaduna, Zamfara, all the way to under different commander. So what I'm just saying, Lakurawa, is just another group under a different commander, added to what we already have on ground. And if we are still struggling to counter the ones that we're currently having, we're having before this emergence of Lakurawa, Lakurawa is just going to be another name that's going to dominate our public space in terms of terror for quite a long time, until we decide to declare that Nigeria is at war. And when we declare that Nigeria is at war, there are certain measures that ought to be put in place that will allow the military and the intelligence service to be able to do their work better. If we continue under this current approach, if the United States, the moment the United States declare that it is at war, there are certain things they will not do ordinarily that the law will permit them to do in order to neutralize the threat that they're having. And I think it's enough. We've played enough politics around, what's the way some people will view this, the way some groups will attack government, they will attack the military, attack the intelligence services in terms of how, the things they did and the things they did not do. If they act, they will complain they are acting too much. If they don't, they will complain that they are not doing enough. Well, I think it's high time that we actually address this issue the way it is. Nigeria is at war, and that is the truth.
Akem, is Nigeria at war? Are we playing?
See, there's a tendency to think that everything security has to be kinetic, that you must bring military force to bear on it. This kind of thing we're in, it cannot be tackled mainly by the military. There are factors that are precipitating this. You are having poor governance. If you leave vacuums, it will be occupied. Why these people are welcome is because the governance structures that are supposed to be effective on the ground, catering to the needs of the masses, are not visible enough. So when you have a situation like that, okay, for example, this new group that is in English is called recruits, are actually taxing the indigents. 1 cow out of every 30, you provide 1 cow out of every 30. They've given new rules that women must wear hijab. Men must wear short trousers and grow beards. In other words, they are not coming with an olive branch. They are coming to occupy a space and to govern in the way that they wish they can govern. And so, if you leave everything to the military, you are going to keep on moving in cycles. There are things, this kind of thing must be tackled with the whole of government approach. And then that means that you deploy everything. Kinetic force, yes. Gather intelligence. Man your borders. Be quick to react to situations, developing situations. Deny them spaces with which they operate.
I want to be able to get your answer because you haven't answered my question. We understand it's asymmetrical warfare, which means that you have to deploy kinetic and non-kinetic means.
Yeah.
Non-kinetic means sometimes take time. It means empowering people, eliminating poverty, removing people from situations where they can be recruited by these people.
Yeah.
We understand that. Let's talk about the kinetic measures right now.
Yeah.
We'll get to the non-kinetic in a bit. When it comes to kinetic measures, is it time to declare war so that we can put aside?
Not already fighting
hold
war?
Hold on. The way Dr. Adetayo refers to it is if we insist that look, let us declare war so that we can put away some of the hindrances and really bombard these people. That's where he's coming from. What do you think? Is this the way to go? This is our balancing act?
I do not agree that you need to declare war now, that you are fighting a war. Fighting a war, already you are engaged in operations across several fronts. You do not necessarily have to say, I declare war. The president has given broad mandate to the armed forces, powers to use. They do not need permission to kill. They have broad permission to kill. Do you need to gather assets together to channel them towards the efforts? Yes, you can do that without necessarily saying Nigeria has gone to war. There are implications when you go to the public and say we have declared war. You are doing things that you will not even do necessarily differently if you say you declare war. You are killing insurgents when you see them, when you have access to them. All you need to do is to mobilize more resources. But it don't necessarily need to be kinetic resources. You need to do the things that you need to do. For example, our borders can be manned, but how many people do you need to man them? So you need technologies. What about the forces coming from the places like Mali? You can come all the way from Mali to Kaduna by bypassing all towns and villages.
But isn't that the point, though? That I know that Dr. Adetayo may seem a little extreme in the way that
it looks extreme. That is the point I'm making.
But 1,400 unmanned borders, and you're fighting insurgents. Every new splinter. In fact, there doesn't have to be a splinter. A group of 5 from inside the terrorist organization can decide, look, if this is lucrative, we kidnap people, they give us money, and let's form our own group now.
No,
so you're basically it almost feels as though, and I understand where Dr. Adetayo is coming from, it feels as though we're handling with kid gloves something that we should stamp out totally.
Yeah, so if you declare war now, what are you going to do differently?
No,
it's the same.
Those borders, if there's actual war, maybe we would have more people manning our 1,400 porous borders. Maybe we will have more military in that area.
Nothing is preventing you from securing your borders now. Merely declaring war will not make it. If you do not have the assets and the resources, you will declare war and you will still not have them. You need to change the way we need to see. We have so deployed the military that they are so straight in on the ground. They are doing policing work. They are doing work that the police should be doing. They are virtually everywhere. In fact, they have demystified the military. The armed forces should not be seen the way we see them within Nigeria. They are involved in everything: anti-kidnapping operations, banditry operations, anti-banditry operations, robbery. It is too much. So, if you say, I will declare war now, what are you going to do differently? When I was in service, at one stage, we recruited 5,000 soldiers. We didn't have to declare war to do that. We knew we needed the strength. You need to amp up the strength. You need to increase the strength of the armed forces. You need to increase the strength of the armed forces. You need to give them the resources they need. You need to divert attention from mere brute force to using technologies that can give you pinpoint, accurate intelligence with which to act. You need to deploy mobile assets that can move swiftly. Yeah, so we need helicopters. But you can do this without necessarily saying we declare war, because there are implications.
Let me ask you this question.
Nigeria is at war with itself.
Major General, let me ask you this question. Is the Nigerian military handicapped?
where, they're handcuffed by lack of strength, and then lack of the
strength here. Is it in numbers or in assets?
Numbers. Let me explain. In a country as large as Nigeria, with the population that we have, your armed forces, your army is not up to maybe 300,000. When I was in Pakistan, I saw that their armed forces were up to 1 million. Because they have challenges and they know they have challenges. When you are fighting insurgency, there are ratios that you must attach to every insurgent person. The aim is to kill them and to deny them space. Now, if you do not have technologies and you want to deny space, then you need to deploy boots on the ground. Now, we do not have the necessary technologies that we can deploy like other countries do, where you can say, oh, they are moving this way, the Air Force goes and takes them out there. The idea is to kill insurgents and reduce their number and discourage them from recruiting, getting access to recruit more. Since we are not doing that, then you need to have an enhanced strength. And the Chief of Army Staff, the late Chief of Army Staff said something to that effect, and he was right. You need to amp up the number of soldiers particularly. You need to increase their numbers drastically because we are using them everywhere. How many states? Almost all the states have soldiers deployed for one mission or the other.
Some of these issues or some of these matters for which the soldiers are being deployed don't necessarily need soldiers.
That is the point I'm making.
So why are they being deployed to this?
Because our other security agencies that should be handling these issues are not positioned to handle them.
Okay. Like Dr. Adetaya, he said here that the other security institutions that should be handling some of the things that the army and the military are being deployed for are not positioned. What can be done to pull back the soldiers from these unnecessary, seeming distractions so that they focus on protecting our borders, our territorial integrity?
Well, I'm very sure that other security agencies, I know they are watching and they will not be happy listening, hearing that coming from a retired major general, that they are not positioned. I think there have been collaborative efforts towards us getting to where we are today, and they have actually done a lot. And I can tell you that.
Sorry to interrupt here. Are you saying the other security institutions, agencies are positioned to handle the issues, the internal issues, so that the army can focus?
Collaboratively. Now we're moving from, we are the state of war. The general said that, he mentioned Pakistan. The truth is that when you are at peace, there is a level of boots, the numbers of military men you are expected to keep. When you get to a situation where you need to have more, like times 3, times 4, times 5, it means that you are no longer at peace. You are not at war. That is one. 2, it speaks to non-kinetic. We have been on this now for over 14, 15 years. We've been using all these approaches and these groups continue to grow. It means that whatever we're doing now is not enough. We need to increase our tempo. Number 3, you spoke of technology. Technology is as good as the people that are manning it. If you don't have the human resources to man the technology is as useless as not even having it in the first instance. 4, all these things together requires huge budgets. You can't get such huge budget at peace to be given to military. You have to actually take something to the National Assembly to tell them that the situation has gone beyond what we have. What we are dealing with. And right now we need so and so. And because of the enormous amount of money you will require, Nigeria needs to understand, and they will have to interpret it the way it is, which means that we're at war. Show me one state, except Lagos State and probably Ogun State, that we're not deploying military, running major operations. Even in Lagos State, we still have the OPMESA supporting the same thing. I quite agree on the ground that we have stretched the military. Yeah, because the number of military that we have on ground is not enough. And we need to come to reality, to terms that we're at war. We need massive recruitment. When they mentioned about that 5,000, there are issues that went in behind the scene that led to the approval of that mass recruitment of the Nigerian army. Because the president at that time soon as said we are at war, even though war was not declared, but the major, sorry, we are at an emergency situation. And then also that approval was given, and safety was given to the Nigerian police and other agencies to recruit. We need to face reality as it is. And we have also been clamoring with saying that right now as it is, even from the DHQ's press statement, they mentioned ungoverned spaces, space in Nigeria. For crying out loud, you have a space that the Nigerian government does not have control over. Military does not have a control over, and you are still saying that you are not at war. Non-kinetic approach takes time for it to begin to have effect. How many people have to be killed for us to get to that level? We will get there, but first thing you need to do when there is fire is that you put out the fire. Then you cannot start thinking of what we will not put in place to ensure that this fire, it is that we don't experience it again. That is the situation. And we need to understand that I'm coming from angle of a man with experience. I happen to be among the first set of people to be involved in this counter-terrorism measure. And I can tell you what we saw, what we know that is happening. So this is different from, armchair analysts that will come on TV and tell you and say, we have a situation at hand.
Can you tell us what you saw?
See, the truth here is that lots of people will continue to join this group until we make it non-lucrative, until we show them that it is a death sentence. Right now, they don't believe that it's a death sentence because they've seen a whole lot of them that have made it and have grown to become bigger boys, created their own camps, and making a whole lot of money. Look at now, even Ogun State going through Shagamu to Ijebu to Benin, kidnapping is already happening there. Just of recent, police made some arrests. We're talking about a situation whereby Nigeria might end up becoming a country where you can't move around any part of the country. You are afraid of people until we make this thing to be, non-lucrative.
Dr. Adetayo, I want to be able to stand on that point so that we don't lose our train of thought on that conversation, because you see, and we've heard this from the DHQ as well.
Allowed to chip in.
Yes, you'll be allowed to chip in shortly. But we've heard from DHQ, and we've heard this narrative over and over again. These are not new people. It's the same. It's the same group. It's the same group it's the same business. They just create splinters here and there, try to call themselves this and that and this and that. And there are fears that we would even have more groups springing up, trying to negotiate their way in this particular warfare that has lasted, like you said, over a decade. Now, there are moderates like the Major General here who say, look, let's not declare war. There are ramifications when you declare war. But in your view, you don't think we have to take all of those measures. What can be done right now, knowing that we have people who are on the moderate side and then people like you who believe let's stamp things out immediately? What can be done? Because now we're seeing more groups sprouting, and we are hearing a lot of crazy things. Listening to General Buba yesterday, it was very scary to hear that we had ungoverned spaces, and these people were able to come in there, collect taxes, and do all of these things in Nigeria. What should the military be doing right now, and the government? Because President Tinubu will probably be hearing this as well. What should they be doing right now?
Okay, this is saying that when you see a snake, you kill it. You don't set up a committee to kill a snake. And that's what we need to do now. Now, coming back to the issue of what will be different if we say that we are now at war, it means that it will allow the military to be able to apply martial law or martial acts empowered by the president in all those areas where legal limitations in terms of how certain things are being handled will be removed, not entirely, but within the space of what the law allows when we are under certain situation. There are areas, there are certain operations that they'll be able to carry, and they will not be hindered by the need for them to obtain, a search warrant, arrest warrant. They'll be able to, because we're talking of places where people are being killed every day, where women are now being rendered widows, children, orphan. And this is what those areas they need to be able to operate far better. They are doing well. And I give the military thumbs up. I give the police, DSS, and the civil defense that have been supporting them. But for crying out loud, look at them. See, The size of Niger State alone, the ungoverned spaces in Niger State alone is enough. I don't even know how.
All right, let's get Major General
in Burkina Faso to come and operate. Is big enough. Niger State alone is big enough to accommodate all these groups.
Yeah.
We still have Zamfara there. We have Kebbi.
We'll get back to you, Dr. Adetayo. Just give me a moment. We'll get back to you shortly. But I want to get Major General Akem to talk about this.
Let me start first by saying that I think he just completely misunderstood what I was saying. You know, if you've had command at the levels that I did, and you were able to work in states where you were attending the Security Council meeting with governors and other security agencies, you obviously know that you need synergy and collaboration. So we're not trying to say other agencies are useless. No, that is not the point I was making. The point I was making was that we have so used the police, the army, and other agencies to the level that there is a wear and tear that is affecting the nation's handling of these emergent security challenges. So there is no time to withdraw troops to retrain them, and that applies to other security agencies. You need to keep training. You need to keep getting the best practices going. So when you are doing that, you will need to increase the strength. That was the point I was making. No service can tell you that we are okay. We are fully equipped. We have trained to the level that we want. We are very professional. Then there will be no need to train. You need to keep training and doing the things that you need to do. Yes, I have mentioned on government spaces that they are there. Since you cannot insert troops everywhere, that is where intelligence gathering and technology is coming. Let me give you an example. You see a column of IS in Sahel moving. You see them, you gather the intelligence through electronic means, you send the Air Force to take out the column. That helps you. So you need to harness all the assets. Look, if you participated in writing a national security strategy like I did, you will know some things. So I'm not just sitting here talking. We have a Counter-Terrorism Act.
But we've been doing these things.
We have a Counter-Terrorism Act that gives broad powers to security agencies to do multiple things. Their hands are not tied to the back.
Are they, with everything that has been happening with our security agencies and all of the efforts, this DHQ briefing is every two weeks. There's always sustained bombardment of all sorts of insurgency and all sorts of terrorist situations in different theaters of war across the country. And they do call them theaters of war. In any case.
So you don't need to be like already in war.
In any case, with all of the things that we've seen them do over the years, do you think that enough is being done? If in 2024, we're hearing of a new terrorist group coming up, we saw neighboring countries talking about how they were going to fight the insurgencies that they have seen in borders with Nigeria. We heard that recently from countries around the Northeast.
Okay, so
our forces, are they doing everything that can be done, or is there more that could be done?
I can say we are doing more that can be done, and at the same time, I can tell you also, point blank, that 4 or 5 years ago, you didn't have the destabilization that we have in the Sahel region, of where you have Burkina Faso, Mali. Northern Mali has always been ungoverned because it's arid, it's dry, and the population generally doesn't stay there, because I was in Timbuktu some years back to see our troops, and I saw that it's just dry land. They don't stay there. So enough space for terrorists and criminals to do anything they want to do. We have a lot of ungoverned spaces, not only in Nigeria. We have weak governance in all the Sahel states. So when you have that situation, and then you have the development in Sudan, and then coupled with the development in Libya a couple of years back, and you have a nation and a region that is awash with small arms, where any ragtag person that has access to weapons can use them, then you have the challenges we're having. In other words, when the military is about to finish handling a challenge, another one emerges. It has become the norm in a 21st century world that is, with an increased population, 8.1 billion people on Earth, climate change forces exerting on resources and making people to migrate and move, people looking for things, resources, extractive resources that can be extracted are causing multiple security challenges.
Yes.
So when the armed forces and the police and the SS, the DSS and other agencies are tackling one issue, another one emerges. I will be foolish, and it will be foolish for me to sit here and tell you that if we finish this, we will never have any problem. There's no country like that in the world. Every country is having challenges, and it will continue. If anybody tells you they have a silver bullet to all the challenges, they're selling you a bill of goods. The issue is you must position yourself to try to secure your borders, secure your territory, and do everything you can to govern in such a way that the pool of resources from which terrorist organizations recruit will be limited. If you leave people ungoverned, like we have done, then you will have terrorists taking over the places and doing things that the government should be doing.
Sorry,
so that is why.
Hold on, if I may ask you, when you say leave people ungoverned, please
yeah,
break it down.
Okay, so let me say this. If the presence of government is not felt in some places, if amenities that are normally, because nation states were formed to handle certain issues. If the things the governments normally will handle are not being handled and poverty is increasing, it is to your attempts, oh Israel, everybody will be trying to help themselves, which is what is happening now. People trying to fend for themselves. People, young people coming up, not getting education, somebody filling the gap and giving them an education that is not useful to them and useful to the nation. So when that continues, then you are getting to a point where the pool of recruitment will be becoming larger and larger and larger. So it will be easy. Anyone with a gun, 2-3 guns can get a band of men to himself. So you need good governance. You need to have the presence of government fed in areas, in places where you cannot, because of the challenges you have now, you need to be conducting surveillances, checking them out, and taking out terrorist groups as they are forming. So it is not just a Nigeria problem, it's the problem of the region. So if Nigeria handles it, Mali is not able to handle it, Burkina Faso is not able to handle it, Niger is not able to handle it, then you will still have challenges. So that is why these states must work together with Nigeria and other states within the West African region, because it's a common problem and a common threat that affects all of us. Nigeria cannot do it alone. And that's the point.
I'm looking at Dr. Adetayo, who's smiling as you're speaking. What are your thoughts?
Okay, you know what? Where your end is frolicking with a fox, what you need to do is, first of all, you chase the fox away, then you deal with the head. The general has told us what we need to do. But the question, just like many, how do we do it? We speak of ungoverned spaces. So do you go to ungoverned spaces and start making road there?
I think
and start taking food
these
there?
Things.
I'm coming. You can't go there right now. You first of all need to clear them out. How do you forest? This is not about non-kinetic. This is purely kinetic. We have people in the forest that have created a country of their own in the forest. We need to clear them out. And the way for us to clear them out is purely kinetic, as it is. The Air Force have done a lot of work in Northeast, but we've not seen the same effort in the Northwest because the terrain are different. These people take advantage of long canopy of trees to operate in such a way that most times it will be difficult for the Air Force to be able to detect them. The terrains are different. We need to clear that forest, and the way we can clear it is for us to launch a major one.
Does he know that Sambisa Forest?
I think we have a bit of an issue with him.
So yes. Can I explain something?
Yes, please.
Sambisa Forest, for example, Lagos State can enter into it 18 times. How are you going to occupy that place? How are you going to clear it? It runs all the way to Cameroon.
Are you saying it's impossible?
Wait. Let's get this thing real.
Yeah, we understand that.
Let's be real now. Let's be real. See, we have terrorist groups who do not hold ground. So what do? They hit and run. They hit and run. So how do nations fight this? My dissertation in Pakistan, in the National Defense University of Pakistan, was on counterinsurgency operations. You clear, build, and hold. You clear, build, and hold. So Clearing, you clear the terrorists, you build structures of governance, and then you hold. You need plenty of troops to be able to do that. If you don't hold and you are doing clearing operations and bombing, how many places can you bomb in Sambisa Forest? I've told you that Lagos State can enter into Sambisa Forest 18 times. That is how large and how long and how big it is. What are you going to do? They will hide, you bomb them, they die, they recruit more because there is a resource for recruitment, they keep doing it.
So it's impossible. Is that what I'm hearing
Madam,
from you? Is it possible?
I am saying that fighting this war is like eating soup with a knife. It will be messy, it will be long, but you need to keep at it. Kill insurgents, deny them space, hold ground. If you do that, then you will reduce the space within which they operate. So we have been in this business for long. We can't say that the armed forces are clueless. We can't say that the security services are clueless. They do not know what to do. We have officers and military forces and security agencies that have been trained up in the best places around the world. What are they? What do we need to do differently? I've said it. Leverage technologies. What do? Be mobile. Have mobile assets that can move quickly. He gave you Niger State, and he was right. Niger State alone is large. Now move all the way, Katsina, Kano, move all the way around. You discover that you are dealing with a very wide space. So even if you recruit more and more and more and more, yes, it's good to recruit and increase the strength, but you will actually need those technologies I'm talking about. You will need to re-engineer the forces in such a way that they are equipped in a way that they can be very mobile. Okay. Look, America moves many thousands of miles across to do damage on terrorist organizations. We can do the same thing.
All right, thank you. We're in winding down. Dr. Adetayo, there's been that suggestion of bringing in mercenaries to handle this matter. If maybe because our own military personnel and security personnel are inhibited by laws and all of that, bringing in mercenaries who operate free will. But do you think that's the way to go?
Well, there is no approach that will solve this problem to me that is not welcome. But I also need to have here that the advantages that mercenaries have is the fact that they have with them equipment that probably a country like Nigeria may be having hindrance procuring because of certain rules and regulation, and they can source for it because they already have probably, for example, this popular Russian and military contractors that have access to Russian military hardware and technology. Those things, engaging an organization like that can help you to be able to have some technology that can easily help. Like the general said, technology is important, and I never disagree with that. We need manpower. That is exactly my point. And I've raised the issue that the fact remains that we need to begin to clear the forest. We need to be able to map out those forests. The fact that he said that our security forces are tired is one reason why we should be afraid, we should be concerned that the people we have already are tired. How do we replenish them? How do we reproduce? We need to start thinking of that now and start building up. Start thinking solution, 5 years, 10 years solution. How we start, if we start today and say, you know what, we are multiplying our armed forces by 20. And this is the program that we're going to run a short-term, program for any young Nigerians that want to join the army for 5 years program or 10 years program for this particular purpose. And after that, they will have certain benefits, and then they can easily be able to be integrated. Those that want to remain government, because we can't continue to keep those large numbers of military personnel if we don't have that threat anymore. Okay. So that's really what I'm talking about. Let's have a program.
Dr. Adetayo, thank you so much, General.
Yeah,
we have 30 seconds.
I'd like to comment on that mercenary issue. I think Nigeria is beyond that. Nigeria should not engage in hiring mercenaries. We have enough armed forces, people to handle that situation. The challenge is that you have overstretched them, recruit, retrain, equip, get intelligent access and then you can do the job.
All right.
You do not need mercenaries.
All right, thank you so much. Been speaking with Dr. Sheyi Adetaye, former DSS operative and publisher of Iran Intelligence, Regional Vice President, AC's International West and Central Africa region, who joined us virtually. Thank you. In our Abuja studio, we had retired Major General Pat Akem Bingye, who holds a PhD in criminal justice and at one time was Provost Marshal of the Nigerian Army and subsequently Chief of Logistics. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Adetaye. Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment, but first, when we come back, we'll be heading to the Business Morning studio on Sunrise Daily. Just stay with us.
Thank you so much, Neilta. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We do business for just about 30 minutes, then we head back to the Sunrise Daily studio. We start from the global space. Oil prices fell slightly today, Friday, as a risk that a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico will affect U.S. oil and gas output that declined, while marketers continue to weigh how President-elect Donald Trump's policies might affect supplies. And of course, we remember that yesterday also we saw that Federal Reserve meeting and they cut rate 0.25%. So this morning we see Brent sustaining the $75 level, $75.37 a barrel, down 0.3%. The inverse is the case for WTI. It's up 0.5%. I guess a whole lot of things happening in the United States can be connected to that. So WTI is $72.01 a barrel, and we see a reduction in that difference in the prices there for them. Well, the benchmark fell after being nearly 1% up on Thursday. For the week, Brent is set to gain 3.1%, while WTI is set to rise 4.1%. Prices corrected after gaining support on Thursday on expectation that Trump's incoming administration may tighten sanctions on Iran and Venezuela, which could limit supply and, of course, boost price. There was strong dollar and lower crude imports in China caps gains. A strong dollar makes oil more expensive for other currency holders and tends to weigh on prices. Also, downward pressure came from data showing that crude imports in China, which is the world's biggest oil importer, fell 9% in the month of October. And that's the sixth consecutive month showing a year-on-year decline. So we don't know what's going to happen to demand in China, looking at the past, the history of the relationship between Trump when he was president and that country. Now let's look at our currency back here in Nigeria. We saw NAFEX depreciate, the day before it was gaining. So it seems almost all through this week we've been seeing an inverse relationship between both. So while NFM we saw gain 2.51% to close at 1,639. Thankful for this. I think this is the first gain we've recorded this week on NFM. So we opened at 1,681 and 65 naira and closed at 1,639 naira 50 kobo. Inverse is the case for NAFEX at the close of trade yesterday. And yes, yesterday we're talking about the issue of intervention from the CBN. We haven't seen that this week. Mr. Bismarck Karani, the Chief Executive Officer, thinks that perhaps they're working on that schedule or program that will make it, not just sustainable, but also predictable and create a certain level of certainty in the market. Perhaps that's what the CBN is working on, and that's why we have not had an intervention in the market this week. Now, the Tinkan Island Command Management Team of the Nigeria Customs Service has hit a new revenue generation record in the command as it's made over 1 trillion naira looking at from January till date. The controller of the command, Dera Nadi, explains that a higher percentage of importers are now compliant and fair in their cargo declaration, which yields to a better revenue generation for the command.
I just announced here that the one we handed. We are glad to announce that several of our stakeholders share our vision of voluntary compliance and are supporting our reforms in the command. With the cooperation of this category of stakeholders and a few others who we have encouraged to comply through our enlightenment programs, we are glad to announce that the command as of today, the 7th of November 2024, has generated the sum of 1,046,496,000,000 naira to the Federation account through the custom revenue we generated. The command wishes to celebrate this milestone of collecting over 1 trillion as custom duty, being the first time this has been achieved in the history of Tinkan Island Port Command. I dedicate this achievement to the Comptroller General of Customs, Bashir Adewale Adeni, MFR, and his management team.
Well, do I say congratulations to the customs or congratulations to Nigeria? What remains is to see where that revenue will head to and how it will affect, capital spending, especially in the country. Now, experts say that for Nigeria to achieve the targeted $1 trillion economy, the federal government must provide enablers for such growth with formulation of supportive policies and laws that will attract investors into the capital market. And this is the tone at the financial expert meet at the 28th annual stockbrokers conference happened in Ibadan. The second day is today, actually. So you have day 2 today in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital. And they said despite the global economic crisis, Nigeria has a vibrant economy that must be nurtured for exponential growth and tangible prosperity. This formed the basis of conversation at the conference with the theme Capital Markets as the Catalyst for the $1 trillion economy. The agreement is that the capital market plays a pivotal role in achieving this target, but both the public and private sectors at various levels need to harness and mobilize capital for their broad and varying needs.
One of the cardinal objectives of this government is to achieve a $1 trillion economy within the next 3 years. And we feel that stock market, capital market, is the most visible avenue to achieve that as it is now.
Technology is always an enabler. And for us at the SSA, it is the prime reason for growth. So you employ technology from different angles. And so what you have seen so far is the use of technology to drive the market, with more investors coming into the market via technology. As you are aware, we just launched the offering platform, that baited and also helped in the offering processes for banks recently, for which over 1.7 trillion naira was raised. That's to tell you what technology does.
Energy security is a must-have for any development to take place in any country. The real sector in Nigeria, led by the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, believe this conversation must be had. And they say they've done some research and are willing to share it, propose solutions with stakeholders in the value chain of creating energy security. That's the theme and the focus of their energy summit, which is to hold later on this month. Members of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria believe that they have explored workable ideas to solve Nigeria's energy deficiency. They are now set to share the findings and collaborate with other stakeholders through the Manufacturers Energy Security Summit.
So what they're trying to do is, one, look at those who have this opportunity to supply to generate power or have excess of power. Get members on the other hand who are in need of that. Bring these two together and create a synergy to work. Any other thing that MPDC can do to ensure this could happen, MPDC will do that within its scope of objectives.
It's intended to serve as a platform for manufacturers and others to discuss and explore sustainable solutions for the industrial growth of the country.
Okay, why don't we look beyond what is in grid and look at sustainable energy. So we are now advocacy for members to switch or mix the switch. Either you're working with the current fossil fuel where you have salt from the grid and generators, and then lace it with solar.
The Manufacturers Energy Security Summit is with the theme Energy Adequacy for Industrial Growth. It's a 3-day event scheduled to hold from November 19.
Thank you so much for joining. And also,
now let's talk about a matter that has been on for a while now. That's the upgrade of banking apps. Core banking apps is what they call it. And looking at where we are at this time, let's have this conversation now with Dr. Yele Okeremi. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Precise Financial Systems. We know him very well, dealing with software and all those ICT issues. Dr. Okeremi, thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you for your time on the program.
Very good morning, Nini. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, even though it's virtual. But the issue of this transition, we've been at it now. I think it's about a month. We've had announcements, preparing consumers, but now we've seen it taking longer than was expected. Transition to new core banking applications. Help us to understand what's really going on here.
Well, I mean, see, for banks and other organizations to decide to change their core banking, core applications, ordinarily speaking, it's not a routine thing at all. It's something that's taken very seriously. But then, of course, it happens from time to time and there are several factors that could lead to the desire or the requirement to want to upgrade or to change core applications. Principal factor being technological changes. So you recognize that sometimes you realize that the owners of the intellectual property of the platforms that you are probably using have decided not to further support the old platforms. And so in a manner of speaking, that can force organizations to say, yes, it's important for us to migrate to some platform that will be supported, because support is very, very key. But the bottom line is that when these kind of things happen, whenever an organization wants to move or migrate, well, I mean, and I'm using these words very carefully, there's a possibility of saying you want to migrate, there's a possibility of saying you want to upgrade. Now, whichever one you choose to do is never cheap. And the reasons why it is never cheap is that as much as possible, you want to carry along legacy data along with you. Now, that will be challenging. And the levels of complexity of these challenges vary. It depends on the type of upgrade or migration that is happening. So if it's a migration of merely the presentation layer, an upgrade of just the presentation layer, then that's very easy. These are the kind of things that happen, and you probably will not even know. For many of us that use mobile devices, so from time to time you see your application is upgrading. So and you probably don't even know anything happened. But when the changes or the upgrade are fundamental, affecting the structure of the data, then sometimes it could take a I don't want to say a very long time. It could take longer than just merely, when the presentation layer is being changed. And that's why you notice that in very many clients, changing core applications is not something anybody wants to do every 5 years or even every 10 years. That's why you come to the US, for example, you see banks that are running application. They've been running this application for several years, and the applications still run because they know that the change might not be very easy, and sometimes the change may not also be cheap. And as we are seeing in Nigeria, the change may be very painful, particularly to customers. And remember one thing, when we talk about banking, it's easy to look at banking as a business. Yes, indeed, banking is a business. But one thing people do not talk about is that banking is trust. So banking is not merely a private business. Banking is trust because banking has access and holds significantly public funds. And when you have this kind of things, you notice that every smart or every sane government anywhere in the world is concerned about trusts. Because when trusts begin to break down, then you might just be looking for social unrest. And this is why these are very important things that people should pay attention to. But again, what we are seeing happening right now is as a result of the fact that for some reason, I mean, I don't remember this happened, well, in about the year 2000, in the Y2K, the Millennium Bug, I know a number of banks upgraded and changed applications. But since year 2000, I do not recollect when you have about 3-4 banks, in quick succession, upgrading applications. And I think that these are the issues that have caused a lot of furore in the country.
So Dr. Keremi, do you think that perhaps there were not 3 steps that should have been taken before this? Do you think perhaps that is why we have this major disruption, which is still ongoing even up till now?
Well, the honest truth as a practitioner, because I mean, my company is also involved in some of these kind of things. We do these kind of things. So sometimes it's not because you are not prepared. Sometimes, and I'm not exonerating that perhaps there are issues of lack of preparedness, but sometimes even your best of preparations may not be sufficient when you get into the field, particularly when you are making very complex changes. I mean, like I said earlier, so you can talk about three layers in modern applications today. We talk about the presentation layer, we talk about the logic layer, and we talk about the data layer. Like I said earlier, if you are merely changing the presentation layer, that might just be a matter of hours, sometimes even minutes. Nobody even notices anything, and things go on. Sometimes when you are making changes to the application layer, it might take a little longer, but it gets more complex when you are making changes at the data layer. And it again gets further complex when you are moving or migrating to entirely new structures, entirely new databases, and some of the times you are moving to entirely new operating systems, sometimes you are moving to entirely new hardware platforms. Now, some of these things can really be challenging. So even with your best of plans with your best of documentations, there are possibilities of glitches when you go ahead. And then when you also recognize the fact that the core applications that we see in very many banks all over the world, not just related to Nigeria, it's called the core because it is the center. There are several affiliated and several associated applications that are interfacing and talking and listening to this core application. And some of the applications are developed and provided and supported by third parties. So again, sometimes these handshakes sometimes look very pretty on paper, but when you get to the field, they may not be as pretty as they look on paper.
All right, Dr. Keremi, just do hold your thought for a minute. We need to go on a commercial break. We'll be back to continue this conversation. And I'd like for you to chew on the perspective that perhaps it is the migration of talent, especially in the ICT sector in Nigeria, which started, I think, last year or 2 years ago, that has put us in this, this situation that we're in. But we'll talk about that after this break. Oh, welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We've been speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of Precise, joining us to discuss the issue of the core banking apps upgrade, which has caused a whole lot of disruption in the financial sector in the country. Dr. Keremi, thank you so much for your patience. So how would you react to the perspective that it's the migration of talents, the popular now JACPA, that has put us in this trouble that we are facing?
Now, look, and this is just the truth. Remember, I was describing to you the process and the theory that involved in migration. But like I said, first of all, when these kind of projects are supposed to take place anywhere in the world, you need a pilot. That's the person who's the top man, who's driving this entire initiative. And the pilot is somebody that's responsible for the overall delivery. Now you're expecting somebody that's extensively experienced, not only experienced, extensively knowledgeable, because experience is about, oh, I did this 2 years ago and this is what I, but you need somebody who has absolute and excellent knowledge and understanding of the issues on the table. And this pilot must necessarily be supported by a very strong team of team leads, and then you have team members. Now, everything you are discussing for you to have a smooth sail depends on the understanding and the talent. And if you are lacking in any of these areas, of course, it will be a factor in either slowing down or even sometimes outright failures of the entire process. Absolutely, I don't think any bank will completely say that they have not suffered from the exodus of talent. And exodus of talent, the country in all facets, particularly in technology. So you see that technology, it's impossible for you to compensate technology experts the way the economy of Nigeria is today appropriately when you compare to what they are capable of getting elsewhere. So expectedly, you expect that such talent will migrate to where they are going to be best seated. So when this happens, and we've seen this, I mean, my company will do extensive work with banks. I mean, we've worked with more than 120 banks across the world. But when we look at our experience in Nigeria and in Africa, we've seen that a lot of times delivering simple applications may be challenging, not because they are not willing, but because some of these experiences are no longer available. And then you see, the honest truth of the matter is that you are looking at tech experience alone. No, when you are doing this kind of extensive thing, it's not just tech experience that you are looking for. You are looking for people who have the domain knowledge and understanding of the business itself to help you lead the initiative hand in hand with the technology guys. Because technology guys understand tech, but the business people are the ones that know the rules that need to be followed. And they are the ones that ultimately test and tell us whether it is properly delivered or not. Where are these talents? The industry is completely in dirt. I talk about, when I look at my own generation of bankers, all of us, maybe you have a handful of us who are still CEOs. You know, maybe 3-4 people by generation are still CEOs of banks. But take a look at the layer below that, and you realize that the banking industry itself is in big trouble. You know, because these are the days when I see bankers, unfortunately, due to no fault of theirs sometimes, and of course sometimes due to some fault of theirs, some bankers at senior levels cannot even calculate simple interest anymore. We're having challenges in that area. So we have serious issues in that area, and of course it will definitely be a factor that's affecting some of these deliveries. No doubt about that. But essentially, let's bear in mind that migrations of platforms, not beans. And that's why very many banks outside of Nigeria don't do it on a routine basis. Nobody does it on a routine basis.
So now, I think one of the top most worrying questions you would hear is, it does seem like some funds have been stuck in between banks, you know, in all of this process. So even when a bank comes out to say, okay, we're now done with the process, our apps are now working efficiently, some transactions that were initiated, you know, in that period seems to be stuck. I wonder what the fate of a customer should be. You go to your bank, they said, oh, there was no fund drop. You go to the other bank, they say, we already debited that. So I don't know, is there a way to get proof? Is there a way for customers to get relief and, you know, compensation for some of those funds that seem to be stuck in transaction?
Now, see, the honest truth of the matter is that I laughed when you started talking about those issues, because indeed, even PF, my own company, as influential as we are, have some of those challenges, you know, where we transferred money to some people. I mean, we were talking about months ago, and the monies left our account. It didn't get to the other account. And at the point I saw back and forth, And I had to say to my people to get in touch with, NIPS, and NIPS told us exactly what was wrong. So these are issues. However, you see, remember one of the things I said is that, yes, banking is business, but banking is trust. And this is where regulation and regulatory supervision comes in, big time. So you are looking for situations. I mean, some of these monies we are talking about, maybe to some people like yourself, might be nothing, but to some people might be life and death. So if somebody is trying to transfer 25,000 to her relative who is in critical situation in a hospital, and that's the last 25,000 in the account that this person has. She transfers the money, account debited, the other party didn't receive the money, the relative or the loved one is probably in coma. How do you handle these kind of things? So ordinarily speaking, there should be guardrails that should be provided at the highest levels, at supervisory levels, that ensure that the interests of customers are protected. So, I mean, for example, in some countries, in the United States, for example, if I went through my accounts in the US and I saw a transaction that I don't feel that I don't recognize, if I go on the platform and I say I'm disputing that transaction, no questions are asked. I get the credit immediately while the bank is investigating. And sometimes they come and say, okay, so sometimes they say, well, having done our investigations, we recognize that you should have been debited, and then they take the money back. But sometimes you don't hear anything back from them. It tells that your transaction, and they conclude and say, well, we've investigated, everything is fine, you can go ahead. I have belief as a customer that if I transfer money to somebody, if the person doesn't get the money, I can get the money almost instantly. I am aware of, just like you said, transactions that are in limbo for weeks, and it's generally and point blank unacceptable. And sometimes I would even say irresponsible that these are happening. But again, these faults, we have sufficient room to blame, the players. Because sometimes I've seen the fact that the people you are even talking to in the banks are overwhelmed. They don't even want to go ahead and investigate. And some of them don't even know what channels to investigate. So they become, rather than assistants who are willing to help you, they become gatekeepers who are trying to keep you out and who are trying to tell you that, sorry, there's nothing I can do. Why should you tell me there's nothing you can do about my own money that I have kept? No, that's irresponsible. But we are seeing some of it.
Yes, I guess perhaps we need to call out to the regulator to come in now, because there are a number of transactions that, as you described, are in limbo as we speak, and they've been hanging for weeks now. Yes. And, the customers really do not know what else to do, because I've been to the bank recently, and true word, Dr. Keremi, those customer service, they're overwhelmed at this time. They really don't know what to do. So I guess it's our duty right here as the media to call out the regulators to intervene in this, and we'll stay on that matter. But thank you so much, Chief Executive Officer of Precise Financial Systems, for joining us all the way from New Jersey. I know the time difference makes it uncomfortable for you, but thank you for your time this morning.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. All right, let's just do a bit of the market. For a second time this week, we saw the bull out at the close of trade yesterday, and it's thanks to Aradel again. Aradel is back on the winning streak. Well, after it's lost so much in the share price, I guess it looks attractive again, but we don't know how long it will last, because I believe that those major investors in Aradel Holdings are out to take profits, and they are the ones that have been driving that market. But see here, 0.37% in the green, and that's some money added to the market at the close of trade, 58.731 trillion naira. As you can expect, oil and gas was up yesterday, 1.8%. Talking about the counters, consumer goods and all of that, not a whole lot of movement. But I'll be back this afternoon. I'll be here with Will Ibon. We'll take you through the market, and both of us will do 55 minutes of business. That's what we do on Business Incorporated. So do make it a date, 1 p.m. I'll be back. I'm Mini John Mekwa. I hand you back to Nelta and Kayla.
bandits are also threatening the contractors that we sent to fix it, which is why we sought help of the NSA and the other security agencies. So, with due respect to the Chief Senator, the northern blackout was not due to technical grid collapse. It was vandalization. And we have explored alternative routes of supply power, which is the Bauchi route, which was also vandalized anyway, but that one is easier to fix. And we are saying within the next 2 to 3 days, there will be light restored to the north.
Oh, well, Kayla.
Yes,
Kayla.
MT. Yes, Nelta.
How many times did I call you?
That too.
That's less than the number of times the national grid has collapsed. And you answered me those two times.
I mean, it's a shocking situation.
No.
And with Nigerians have a way of making jokes out of everything. But this is not funny.
I beg to differ, Kayla. I beg to differ. I don't think they're making jokes. It's called it's a survival mechanism.
A coping mechanism?
Coping mechanism. Okay, that's what you want.
But it doesn't get things done.
Who told you?
It doesn't. Does it work?
Kayla, it does. That's why they're not dropping dead as they are walking along the road.
No, I meant get things done as in fixing the actual problem. It makes us able to cope with the problem, but it doesn't fix the problem.
So the problem, as someone said, the problem is not even the coping mechanism, but understanding that when you go to the polls, what you're doing is like you have a business and you employed somebody to come work for you. The person works for you, and you can ask, you are permitted by law to ask the person questions and to hold the person accountable. That is what the Nigerian has failed to do. He's ready to find a coping mechanism, crack the jokes, laugh about it, and move and wait for the next 2-3 years to go back to the polls. And when he gets to the polls, some of the Nigerians are willing to collect that 1,500 or some, I use some, and then look away and things happen. And then when they now come back to hold that person accountable, they're not able to. Because by the time you're coming to that, your employee who's sitting in that number 1 office or number 2 or number 5 or number 6 office, as the case may be, is your employee, is your money that's paying his salary as allowances. So when you now come to him every day to collect money for school fees, money for funeral, money to do one thing or the other, when he's not doing the job you're paying him to do, you can't hold him accountable.
I mean, I think as a people, we have to move from the outrage to action. And when I mean action, I'm not talking about going out there and being violent or anything. We're asking the accountability required. A recent reshuffling was done of the president's cabinet. This minister of power has stayed in this office. How is he delivering on it? What's he doing? The reason why we say talking about the jokes that people are making is because we actually saw people say, no, they're asking that we should be giving some kind of award for the most power grid collapses of a country. And then we also have to understand that the ramifications of these things on businesses or on people's lives, on productivity. And remember that we have been put into bands. We're still trying to understand this banding that has happened. So I'm on band A, but I still don't have electricity. And it's because the grid has collapsed. So what should be done? And from what we're hearing from the Minister of Power, at least from the things that were said yesterday, there's a lot of recommendations that they have, and they're telling us to be patient because as these repairs and upgrades continue, there will be power loss. That is basically what we've heard from the minister from that meeting yesterday. But joining us right now to shed some more light on this conversation is Mr. Shola Adekanye. He's joining us from Vacaville in California. He's the CEO of Open Innovation Access. It's nice to have you on the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
So
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about these recommendations by the Minister of Power. We just had the embarrassing situation in northern Nigeria, 2 weeks without electricity. And then we're dealing with banding. And now the grid is collapsing more often than necessary. This is the 11th collapse this year. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, these are real problems, and they will unfortunately continue. Because really, to put things in perspective, the grid is outdated. That's number one. So it will continue to suffer inefficiencies. So energy loss during transmission. The second thing there is that the grid in itself, the capacity is way too low for the population we have. Currently, the grid generates about 14,000 megawatts. I mean, that's nothing. And I'll put that in perspective for you. Maximum or peak demand off the grid this year alone is about 20,000 megawatts. But the capacity is about 14,000 megawatts. So we're already demanding more than the grid can even produce. To put things in perspective for you, for 200 million people, that's way too small. In California, where I live, California is about 40 million people, but it generates about 40,000 megawatts. And I can check it right now. Peak demand at this point in time, which is about 1 a.m. right now, where I am, is about 28,000. So there's excess capacity on the grid. So the grid in Nigeria is insufficient, way insufficient. So we would always find this excess load, excess demand off that grid, and it would always collapse. That's the truth about the current situation. Now, the good news is that many different projects going on. There's windmill projects going on in Katsina and also in Sokoto. Really, Katsina, there's a windmill project going on that's supposed to produce about 10 megawatts. That's still nothing, but at least it helps. There are solar farms going on in Kano, also in Delta State, that are supposed to produce, roughly about maybe 210 megawatts. Still not sufficient, but at least a little bit adds here and there, a little bit helps from here and there. But the reality is that the grid in itself is insufficient. We have small projects that are decentralized that are going on in different parts of the country, but are not exactly also going to add too much to meet the demand that we have in Nigeria. So from time to time, we would have these issues, happening because we just demand more than the grid itself can generate.
So there's this interagency committee that has been set up by the Minister of Power, Mr. Delabu. And he talked about some repairs that are going on, and I want to be able to be verbatim. He says, the Shiro Mando axis, there's some work going on there, the Jeba transmission station, and the restoration of the second Ogwaji Ape transmission line. And they're reporting, the reports really from the Minister of Power is highlighting weaknesses in the transmission system. Just so I can understand, for the rest of us really to understand what that means. A weakness in our transition system. What does that mean?
So there's a lot of energy loss during transmission. It's just outdated. So during transmission, we're losing a lot of energy. So what gets generated is not what gets to the end use at the end of the day. So there's a lot of loss in the process. That's what that means. So, until that grid in itself is fully upgraded, it's not just about repairs, it's upgrade. It has to be fully upgraded to be able to manage some of the inefficiencies that we're seeing on the grid. Normally there's about 60% of all energy is wasted, because that's why on the back of your TV, on the back of any appliances, you feel the heat there. But what's happening in Nigeria is that off the grid, once energy is transmitted, you see during that transmission, you feel a lot of heat around all the different infrastructure, that wiring and all the other infrastructure transmitting that energy. And so that's really the heat that's really translating to the energy loss that we're experiencing during transmission. So what the grid produces is not what gets to end use. And that's really, the reality on ground. So there's much less. First of all, we're not producing enough. Second of all, out of the what we're producing, we're losing some of that as well before it gets to end use. So it's never going to be enough.
So to help us understand what happened with the last collapse, what we heard from the Minister of Powers, that it was due to a sudden rise in frequency. What does that mean?
There's more demand on the grid than the grid can produce. The grid produces about 14,000 megawatts. Peak demand this year alone has been about 20,000 megawatts. So you can see we're demanding more, putting excess load on the grid itself. And the grid itself is older infrastructure. So there's no way it can really carry that much load. So that's why we're seeing some of the collapse that we're seeing, because it's never really meant to carry this much load. And there's more demand. The population has grown. You find more companies opening up in, the industries, different things that are opening up here and there. Even though people are generating their own energy, but as soon as demand is still placed on the grid in itself, even with all that energy that are being generated by individuals, by citizens, there's still a lot of demand on that grid.
Dr. Adekaya, you mentioned where you live in California. You talked about 40 million people in 40 million population, and the energy generated or by the grid is about 40,000. I know that the new Electricity Act in Nigeria gives the state and indeed geopolitical regions opportunity to also generate their own power as well. So if in California alone, what do you think is stopping this the states from getting into this mix? Because even the Prime Minister had suggested that, come on, we can have regional grids, we can have state-owned grids, we can have states coming together to form a grid that can serve each state. So what do you think is the reason why these governors or governments are not looking in that direction?
Well, I would say maybe it's priority. Really, it's not prioritized, right? That's number one. Although there are some projects going on at this point in time. There's a project going on in Katsina, which is a windmill project that is supposed to generate about 10 megawatts. That project in itself, at least, will serve some parts of Katsina State. The rest of northern states have they have prime locations for wind energy. But the question is still, that everyone's still asking is why are they not just taking advantage of the wind, consistent wind speed that they experience there and just put up windmills there. So the question still remains unanswered. You find solar farms. One big solar farm that was commissioned in Kano State is generating commissioned in 2020, generates about 10 megawatts. But still, that's not sufficient. But it adds to what we are currently generating on the grid itself. So a little bit helps. Ashana solar farm, also in Delta State, generates about 200 megawatts. So that's regional. It serves people in that state. And then Lagos State just recently started this project, this waste to energy project with in conjunction with this Dutch company, to produce about 60 to about 75 megawatts. That's also on the way. It's not done yet. So we're starting to see state government starting to take, action, into the renewable energy, because the grid in itself, it costs a lot of money to build a grid. So renewable energy, we're starting to see state government starting to explore, into those areas and dabble into some projects in those areas. But they are either too new or just insufficient. They're not adding enough to be able to, they're not adding significant energy for everyone to actually feel the impact of those regional projects. I don't know if you heard recently that about the rural electrification, where World Bank awarded a credit to Nigeria or the Rural Electrification Agency, about $750 million. That could be put to a lot of good use. And I know that if put to good use could really help significantly. So we're seeing some regional projects, just not enough to make that impact that we expect.
So the rural electrification project, for instance, we know that it's been, since it came up, they've done some significant work, but there are those who will tell you that there are communities, some rural communities, who are still not having electricity as they should. So again, the question of captive power comes in, the breakdown of the system as is as though there is a lack of, for want of a better example, a lack of a political will to actually unbundle the structure as is right now. Do you agree with that?
Well, I somewhat agree with that, but I also see some action going on. I mean, there's some tenders that have been released by the Rural Electrification Agency, inviting the public to bid for a project to produce alternative energy in 6 geopolitical zones, 1 megawatt each in each geopolitical zone. So that in itself is an effort, but it's a tiny effort compared to what we need, because 1 megawatt is like, it will add something, but just very insignificant something. It's not going to be sufficient, but there's still action. So we have to give credit for the action we're seeing. There's just not a lot of traction yet. We're starting to see some, just not enough at this point in time. So I wouldn't say that they don't care. Government doesn't care. I think the government is taking some action. I think the government certainly needs some help. I think the government, obviously, the funding has now come in here. So we expect to see more of, more traction in this area, where the government is issuing tenders and inviting the public and the private sector to join hands with the government to really bring in the expertise and to put real solutions on ground. So that's what we're saying, but it will take some time for us to feel that full effect of all these different initiatives.
Okay, so you see what you were talking about, there's action, there are some things that are happening, and indeed I agree with you, there are some things that are happening. There bids have been put out for people to come in to generate electricity in the 6 geopolitical zones, 1 megawatt and all that. Little here, little there coming together. But the picture being painted out there is as though it's going back to that national grid. But we're talking about a move away or an upscaling of the national grid if we're going to be using the national grid, or breaking it down to regional and state grids, so that we have energy sufficiency across the country. Because while all of this is going on, Nigeria sells power to neighboring countries that don't get blackouts. So it's as though there's a different grid for the other countries, and then there's a different grid for Nigerians. And then Nigerians in less than a year have had a collapse of the grid more than 9 times. So what do you think should be the solution? What should we be looking at?
Well, it must be moving away from total reliance on the national grid itself. We have to dabble into renewable energies. And I'll tell you one, so I just mentioned California. California in itself, has approved and gives incentives to households and communities to install solar energies. So you install solar on your home, the government gives you money, because it's just a tax rebate that they give you to encourage and incentivize people. Now, once solar is installed, the government obviously now has a lot of storage. So you're producing a lot of energy for the government. Yeah, and using out of what you're producing. But in most cases, everyone produces in excess. And that's another way that the government is able to manage the capacity that the state needs. The state is the largest state in the country. So, it needs a lot of energy to meet its demand. So Nigeria needs to do something similar. We need to move away from total reliance on the grid to initiatives around the renewable energy. And we have to give some credit to some states that are already doing something in the windmill. Nigeria has a lot of wind, so we need to, Sokoto has consistent wind speed that they could take advantage of. You find the same thing in Kaduna, Delta State, River State, all these different states, they have consistent wind speed that they can leverage to put up windmills. 10 megawatts here, 20 megawatts here would help. Also, solar farms. only about 2-3 states are really doing some major projects in solar. So the more of this sort of renewable energy, projects would help move us away from absolute reliance on the national grid. But each citizen, each state, each region could start to produce produce and store some of that energy on the national grid. Because right now, when to upgrade that national grid, I said, right now we're producing about 14,000 megawatts. To go to full energy sufficiency, to be able to produce enough energy for the country, we need about 200,000 megawatts. I mean, you're talking a lot of gap, a huge gap between where we are to where we need to be, and that's a lot of investment. So we need to move to these regional based renewable energy initiatives.
I want to get to find out. You run a power service, don't you?
Well, we are investing in a company in Abuja that does more of the storage and teaching people how to be efficient. Because part of the problem we have is not that the grid doesn't produce enough. We as a country are not even using energy efficiently.
Efficient use of energy.
Efficient use is not there as well, because we're wasting a lot of energy. One of the things that we've noticed, we've done a lot of research around this, is that a lot of times about 68% of all energy is wasted. So whatever comes to your home, about 68% of it gets wasted at the end of the day. You see many outdated appliances, older appliances, even the newer appliances appliances or electronics only take what they need, and then they emit the rest as heat. So why should all of that energy be wasted? So what we are doing is to work in that area to produce devices that can capture that waste and send them to storage units. So that's the work we're doing. We've already gone through initial tests through NEMSA, Nigerian Energy Management Agency, to get that certified during the first stages. But then we're going to go back and then try to get second round of certification done. And
I want to be able to get your thoughts on something else, because while we're discussing the grid collapsing and the repairs, what they've told us, and I want to use the minister's words, we're to expect intermittent disruptions as repair works begin on the grid. He said it twice. Instability is expected while repairs and improvements are underway. How do we juxtapose that with the fact that many of us are paying more? So it's almost as though for those of us on band A, we're paying for more electricity. We're paying more for electricity that we are not getting.
Yeah, so unfortunately that would still be there because the government is doing partial upgrade as they're doing the repairs. They're not just repairing old grid, they're adding some upgrades to it. And that upgrade costs money. So as they do the upgrade, someone has to pay for that. So the citizens have to pay for it. So if you're in band A or band B or whatever band you are in a way paying for some of that repair, some of that upgrade, and that's what you're seeing. But the good news is that upgrades are being done, repairs are being done. The not so good news is that it's still not going to be sufficient, because the grid capacity is still way, way, way below demand. We have 200 million people who, in many cases, many of us are not using energy efficiently. So, and then you have, industries that are starting to spring up here and there, companies needing energy. At the end of the day, it's never going to be enough. We're still going to find cases where we have to individually produce energy through generating systems or in solar through these solar generating panels that we have. We're still going to be seeing some of that because it's still not enough to really get us to where we are fully sufficient. We would have to get to about 200,000 megawatts. It takes a lot of money to get there and a lot of effort to get there. It's a multi-year project to go from 14,000 to 200,000. So we need more of these regional projects. Lagos State also started this waste to energy more states need to do that because there's a lot of waste that we're generating already. Some of these projects are very expensive, but then they help. They help over the long term. They're cleaner energy. They're more efficient in transmission. So some of that waste that we're experiencing in the transmission of energy from the grid will not be experienced through these renewable energy projects. So we need more of that in order for us to actually be able to get to where energy is sufficient and also not too expensive.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Shola Adekanye, for being with us on the program, and thank you for keeping yourself awake at 1 a.m. just so you can be here with us. And good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Mr. Shola Adekanye, the CEO, Open Innovation Access, and just to reiterate what the Minister of Power, and that it's actually something breaking right now. We just got that from the Office of the Minister of Power, which is that there is a lot of repairs and upgrades going on right now. So expect some sort of uncomfortableness when it comes to power supply wherever you are. So just to understand that, Nelta, that is something that many Nigerians will be. I don't know. I want to be able to believe that Minister Adelabu is the man for the job, and he's probably going to come to a logical conclusion to the issues that we're facing in the power sector. And I hope that that is done.
All right, Kayla, don't worry. They're all on ground. As the president is holding them accountable, we also ought to hold them and the president accountable as well to do that which they said, so that we can have power. And thank you so much for letting us be a part of your day. And indeed, this week, it's a Friday. So go out there and have fun, but be the best that you can be and start your own contribution where you are. Hold yourself accountable before you hold somebody else accountable. Thank you. I'm Neota Igbe.
Have a great weekend ahead. I'm Kayla Megwa.